about Illuminati, since the charting up Epictetus. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, should know what to chat for. Occult Disney, pineal gland, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as above, so below. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers meet just fallen minds. Captain Hook, a lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody means no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about to Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know what to try far. Oh, Occult Disney, the new grand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's above so below. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to the Occult Disney podcast. It's where we take all our toys out into the backyard to recombine them, pull them apart, and find the magic in the toys. Oh, wait, that's Toy Story 1. Today is Toy Story 2, which doesn't quite include that.
This one's going to be Sacrifice.
Yeah, sacrificing the toys. This is Matt here. It's a Paranoid American there. How are you?
I'm on the right today.
On the right today. You are on the right. Okay. Until you and I, yeah, you were on the left until you hit record, and then we switched places. That's interesting.
That's right. Now I come from the east.
You are from the east. Wait, well, America, yeah. I was about to say I'm in Japan, so I guess I get to say I'm in the east, which I guess this movie was about to end in Japan, but fortunately the Andy's gang saved the toys from the museum. That's the what the kid would come away from with this movie, I guess.
That represents like the last 20 minutes that I think could have been cut. Like we're getting into not quite a minute or an hour and 40 minutes area yet, but we're inching closer and closer. This one is like an hour and 30 something minutes.
I'll throw this out there. I never looked at the time, like any point watching this last night. So I guess that's good. It's been a little while since I watched it. I'm on Toy Story 2 team. Yeah, I'm on Toy Story 2 team. I think I saw it opening night. I might have even gone back to see it for the outtakes. I might have gotten suckered in for that because they didn't add the outtakes in until like a month later. I remember getting the really expensive DVD set in 2000 when it came out. Actually, that's what I still have. I never bought them on Blu-ray, but yeah. I was pretty much fully on with this when it came out. So it does have, I think they said 12 minutes of padding. This was going to be a direct-to-video thing, like Return to Jafar or something. And at some point, it was actually being made by completely different people and I'm building across the railroad tracks. They're on the wrong side of the tracks making this for a direct-to-video while the real Pixar staff was making A Bug's Life. But at some point, Disney was like, hey, this actually looks good. Why don't you work on it? And it was just short of a feature. Although the way you're talking, they probably already had it. It would have been like an hour 25. That would have been fine.
I mean, it's wild because this is another one of these weird reoccurring themes where Disney is backing kind of the wrong. I mean, they're all their horses. Like they own the whole racetrack and every horse in it, right? But they constantly seem to be backing the wrong horse amongst which one's getting right to video, which one's getting the feature release, who's getting the Happy Meal toys. Because in my opinion, not only was this way better than Bug's Life ever could have been, even if the stars perfectly aligned. I still think that the premise of this movie, let alone the execution, compared to Bug's Life, but the premise of this one is probably the best Toy Story movie out of all of them. And maybe, I don't know, you were describing Toy Story 4. I barely remember it, but I do remember 1, 2, and 3, and 2 is far superior to 1 in almost every way.
Yeah, I would go with that. This is the movie that kind of, I think, gave Pixar the psychic shielding for 10 years, that like Pixar stories will always come out perfect, which is funny because this one is haphazard. Like in one weekend, they hammered out the rest of the story and the sequencing and had to finish in 9 months because all of the marketing deals had already been made. The Happy Meal was on the way, so they had to deliver the product. Some of the things that got added, the opening sci-fi thing was added for padding, but that's great. That's a
video game opener.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Wheezy was in a recycled element from Toy Story 1. Woody's Nightmare was also a recycled element from Toy Story 1, and there was something else in there was also added.
Wheezy being the penguin, right?
The penguin, Wheezy the penguin, yeah. The point being, like, they all seem like perfectly baked in, so it's crazy that they just shoehorned it in like as fast as they could.
It was a great opening because, like, the opening, it starts with Buzz Lightyear kind of like actually fighting, and I think at the very beginning, partly because I'd seen this a long time ago, but even without knowing that, it definitely gets that feel because he keeps coming up to these perspectives and it's like a platformer and he's got to jump on the stupid little discs that disappear after a while if you don't go across them quick enough. And I saw it, like, even as he's coming up to it, I was like, oh man, this is Mega Man all over again. This is kind of ruin his whole day. But yeah, I thought that the intro was really good for this. And it was also a nice setup for this concept of, like, one way of phrasing is a mirror within a mirror. And this is what I think Michael Sarion said this in one of his Conspiracy Con convention talks, but that film creators, especially cinematographers, love these shots where you can show like two mirrors, and especially if it can be over the shoulder. One of the examples I think is Arrival, or it might be Contact. I can't remember the exact one, but there's like this whole scene where it goes up into a bathroom and the camera goes over some girl's shoulder, and there's a mirror in front of her and a mirror in back, and you can see all that, but you don't see the camera. So this is kind of within the realm of Toy Story. This is that mirror within a mirror. This is the toys are playing a video game based on the toys, but it's being presented to the viewer as if maybe this is the movie, and then they kind of like reveal it. I don't know. Whenever I see that, and what, as Michael Sarion said, the second you see that symbol, it's like strap in, because you're about to get some sort of like an occult education based on this.
And that's a Contact, by the way. If with
Contact, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And a very cool shot. Like, as soon as you mentioned it, I remembered.
So
I love the subtle special effects sometimes.
Apparently, that scene in particular, Contact, and ones like it, according to Michael Sarion, that's when you're supposed to start looking for like really deep occult symbolism.
You can get there with Contact. I love that movie, but yeah. That's pretty easy. That's like that's the low hanging fruit to go with Contact.
Right, but we've got it here too, so I think that was a
yes. We had it with the first Toy Story, right? So it follows that the second one might do that. While I'm dishing out a few production facts, so this one was notoriously almost lost in 1998. It says one of the animators accidentally entered the deletion code /bin/rm-r-f star, which apparently erases everything on the main server. And there was a animator who was working from home because she just had a baby, and she just happened to have everything except like the last 4 days work on her personal computer. So they were able to salvage the movie that way. But that
shout out to her. Yeah, I've heard this story many times as like a precautionary tale, but really it wouldn't, in my opinion, that guy would have done it, but he was just sort of the thing that caused the actual problem to have spawned. Like, really, everyone should have had a backup of that on their machines.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
it should have just been happen chance.
Wasn't there a controversy pretty recently where she was fired by Pixar or laid off? We'll use a euphemism, I guess.
Because she wasn't supposed to have the files.
I think it was just like downsizing or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay, unrelated. Well, yeah, who knows, man?
But there was a
Maybe
big
it
stir up
does.
because people are like, you can't fire the lady who saved Toy Story 2.
Well, not at least not until like some of the residuals have kind of tapered off.
Yeah. It's like at that point, aren't you like tenured or something? What else do we have? Oh yeah, in my notes I was like, when Al shows up, I'm like, is this supposed to be John Lasseter? And the answer is yes, that's supposed to be John Lasseter. Even he admits, okay, that's basically me.
Yeah, I mean, it has that vibe to it.
Right. I don't remember if he hugs anyone in this movie or not, but I don't think so. But I do want to show, when I was looking at the wiki, and I was that Tim Allen has a reputation for being the crazy one, right? But when you go to Toy Story and go for their wiki pages, if you can see it's not very clear, is it? There we go. Tom Hanks is so creepy there. That does look like a man who takes pictures of abandoned shoes. Looks like some wild wolfman.
He makes a cannibal joke in this movie. So this might be one of the first Tom Hanks children's movie cannibal jokes. I don't know.
That and him, peeing in movies? That's the other big Hanks. I guess Woody doesn't pee, so that's actually breaks the.
Well, he's named after a dick.
Okay, there we go. And every other movie, Tom Hanks gets. Sometimes when you think about it, like like in Forrest Gump, he's got his pee scene, and why it doesn't need to be there at all. When he's meeting the president, I gotta pee, which apparently they sold on T-shirts at Bubba Gump in different styles. You wear a T-shirt that says "I gotta pee."
There's another one too that Kubrick films often have a bathroom, even when there's no reason, and you can probably think there's plenty of movies you've seen that never enter a bathroom or show a bathroom for any reason. But I believe in a majority of Kubrick movies, there's like a intentional use of a bathroom at some points.
Oh yeah, I guess after Space Bathroom, it's like, well, we gotta keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Shining. That's like when every YouTube video that's promising liminal spaces will show you the Shining bathroom. Private Pile off Sergeant himself in a bathroom. Yeah, okay. Eyes Wide Shut. That's kind of a bathroom of a movie when you think about it. That's not to criticize the movie. No, it's a great movie. It's just like it feels like kind of like you're living in toilet land while you're watching it. And not like, this movie's crap, just like it has that. Well, it's got a freaking, Illuminati party in it, right? So
and it's about his daughter getting kidnapped or trafficked. It's about giving his daughter up to the Illuminati because they literally tell him, if you don't say this to anyone, and if you do, paraphrasing, we'll come after your family. And he's like, oh yeah, of course. And immediately from there, he goes and he tells his friend all about it. And turns out his friend is like in the Illuminati. Spoiler alert. And at the end, the last time you see his daughter, she's kind of being like escorted away by two huge guys in the background, and you never see her again after that. So I think the implication that Stanley Kubrick was sort of weaving into that was that he violated the oath and they actually enacted on it.
Except in his case, they didn't kidnap his daughter. He died.
Right. Well, man, I've talked to some of the, in my opinion, and the ones that I would trust that I've come to know, like Kubrick sort of experts, and some of the what I would consider Kubrick experts are sort of on the fence, even leaning towards he was old. Like maybe they killed him off because of an Eyes Wide Shut edit, and they needed him like out of the picture so they could delete some like specific scenes. But also he was really old and was maybe on his way out regardless. So I don't know. It might have just been like I don't know, like putting the pillow over grandma's head while she's in hospice.
Well, I feel like he wasn't like insanely old. Now I feel like
well, like, not insanely old, but he was also in very poor health at this point, so it didn't come as a surprise. Apparently, and I'm this is not my own personal view. I don't even know if I have an opinion on this yet because I haven't done my own deep dive. But the people that I most expected to be like, oh yeah, 100%, almost all of them have told me like, I don't know, man. Like, I think that the Eyes Wide Shut, maybe he had some extra cut, but it was probably pretty damn close to what he originally had envisioned. Unless I don't know what the full story is there.
Anyway, 71. He was old, but I could, you could have another movie or two left in you at that age.
Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I guess we'll never know.
No, we certainly didn't have an AI.
Maybe in some other timeline right now, Kubrick is still putting out movies. Maybe there might even be a Kubrick Fast and the Furious movie at some point.
Well, I was about to say, he'd be doing what Clint Eastwood's been doing, right? About the same age.
Could you imagine a Kubrick and Clint Eastwood teaming up to do a movie at this age?
Yeah. I think Eastwood has too much of his own stamp, which maybe wouldn't fit. That was the thing. Kubrick would usually choose actors he could kind of mold. Although, yeah, Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman was a different tenor, of course. But Jack Nicholson, yeah, okay, yeah, it could be interesting. Oh, I muted wrong when I cleared my throat.
Yeah,
okay.
What's the segue from Eyes Wide Shut?
1999 is an amazing movie year because we were talking about that same year. There's just so many movies from 1999 that.
So Eyes Wide Shut was in the theater the same time as Toy Story 2?
A few months prior, yeah. Eyes Wide Shut was weirdly a summer movie, whereas this was released in November. So there's probably a few theaters where they're both playing at the same time. Like the end of maybe. Well, I don't know. Probably not when you think about it, but they're almost the same time.
I'm gonna have to rewatch Toy Story 2 now with this in mind as like a continuation of Eyes Wide Shut. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, there's like a weird kind of Y2K gate where everyone got really put a lot of occult stuff in their movies, especially in 1999. There's so many things with weird deep imagery. I think I've gone through the list before, but Fight Club, American Beauty, Election. I keep going, but yeah. Dark City was The Matrix. Dude, Dark City is 2 years earlier. Yeah, Matrix is 99.
There's some scenes in this movie that remind me of The Matrix, and I don't it seems like it wouldn't have been inspired by because it kind of predates or at least contemporary too. So that was interesting. And also this movie, again, it kind of starts right off the bat with really heavy Saturn symbolism. The very first scene, you see the Earth, you see all the planets, but you see Saturn basically dwarfing every other planet as if it was right next to the freaking Earth. And I know that was just for some artistic effect. And I think it's part of the video game too, that video game intro that we were talking about. And man, as being shoehorned in, maybe not, maybe because seeing that the video game in itself is the mirror in the mirror. So that was kind of I'll say red flag, or, it kind of piqued my interest. And then I saw that huge depiction of Saturn. And then when they revealed that it was all sort of a fake intro, I kind of felt okay, this is where we actually have something in store occult wise now. And I think it kind of paid out in spades here. Yeah.
I mean, I read it to you before we started recording, but yeah, my fifth note is just, and this is a completely different idea. Just animal consciousness is an unverbal gray area between humans and toys, question mark. Because I'm immediately, they were kind of using the dog as their, a proxy to interact with the real world. So the dog can talk to the toys. Dog can, well, not talk, but interact with the toys. Dog can interact with the humans. And it's like the one bridge, because the toys, as we know, have a weird rule that they cannot function with when humans are paying attention to them.
And I still am not sure if they're just all good at paying attention to that rule or if it's automatically enforced, because it almost seems like they intentionally play dead, essentially, you know what I mean? And that it's not that when a human looks at the toy that the toy loses the spirit or the toy collapses. They're consciously hiding themselves from humans all the time. That's kind of what it feels like.
And this one, yeah, it kind of gets weird rules about, because obviously people are seeing the orange cones moving across the street. And let's also note that the toys in that scene are probably responsible for a couple fatalities. That was one hell of an accident. The toys just ended a few lives.
Well, and there's suicide jokes in this movie, and the cut scenes, there's a casting couch joke. There's a lot of over the line or like on the edge of the line at least jokes in this movie, which I don't know. They'll maybe those were meant to be included in the video version, straight to video. And they're like, oh, we can kind of have a little bit more fun here. And then when it went feature, I don't know, because you also said that the cutscenes or like the blooper reel at the very end, they added that after the theatrical release.
Oh, about a month after. Yeah, it was to entice people to go watch it again for Christmas.
That's so slimy.
As the resident sci-fi dork here, while you were very justifiably saying this is a mirror within a mirror, which is a very smart idea, I just wrote, if we go by Star Trek II rules, Buzz really is going to die in this movie. But yeah, because the intro is very Star Trek II as well, as you would expect, and then Buzz dies. I'm like, oh, he's really going to die near the end, but that doesn't happen.
Well, so I got a really weird dig on this movie because, like I said, first of all, when I noticed the mirror within the mirror, and then I noticed the big Saturn, and I also have been doing like a deep dive on sort of astro-theology lately, just because I've had a few guests on my own show that kind of put me onto this track and like kind of pointed out some ways to notice things in these. So anyways, I watched Toy Story 2 through this new lens, but man, there's something crazy that happens in the first 10 minutes, and I hope you'll stick with me through some of it. So it starts out and the dog comes in, and I was thinking in terms of zodiac and in terms of astro-theology, every single character typically can be boiled down to represent some aspect of the zodiac. So the one that made the most sense for Woody for a number of freaking reasons, and they'll keep coming out really good, but he seemed like Taurus because he's literally the cowboy, right? So he's like the cowboy is kind of like the bull man. He's in charge of the bulls, right? He would like steer them. He would be this like Western cowboy, like a cattle wrangler. So that kind of to me represents Taurus in a way. And then we've got Bo Peep as his counterpart, and I feel like she's kind of Virgo, and Virgo and Taurus coincidentally are both earth signs, so they actually are incredibly compatible with each other, and that kind of explains part of this this zodiac sort of lens, right? So first I was like, okay, there's might be something to this, and then the dog runs in and the dog immediately goes after Woody and bites Woody. And first you kind of think that maybe the dog's going to hurt Woody, but then you realize he might be like a friend or a companion. But when he comes in, he bites him and he like whips him around a little bit and he starts licking him. And then it turns a little bit jovial, right? But that exact moment, what you have is the bull being attacked and slain, or at least licked by the dog, the canine. And you've got Virgo in the background. And this kind of reminded me of Mithras, and they had this bull sacrifice ceremony. One of the most popular, I guess, illustrations of this Mithras ritual, these Mithraic rites, is they would have Mithras symbolized as a person holding a bull with like a knife up to it, and then in one of the cuts, there's a dog that's like licking at this wound. So anyways, I won't go into the whole Mithraic rites, but this whole entire sequence was just matching up like frame for frame nearly of what the ritual kind of entailed. And the entire purpose of this Mithraic rite and sacrificing the bull was a retelling of the birth, death, recycle, because the bull doesn't realize this, but the bull is being slain so that it can be reborn and kind of come into the next year, because it is literally an astrological story. There's like a little scorpion that's like biting on his nuts that represents Scorpio or Draco. There's a serpent there which might represent like the 13th zodiac. There's two twins in a lot of depictions. So every single element of the zodiac is representing this Mithraic rite, but the whole premise of it is that the bull man or the cowboy is being slain, or it looks like he's being slain, but really what's happening is the dog is licking at his wounds. So anyways, I'm watching this and I'm like, man, I'm already on this. Woody is the Taurus, and now you've got the canine coming in and licking up after the Taurus, and Woody kind of goes through this incredible transformation in this movie. He like loses a limb. He gets completely left on like a shelf, and he collects dust. Like he kind of like dies and is reborn. And there's so many more examples of where this theory that I just like loosely was like, oh, this kind of looks like that. And like symbol after symbol as the movie went on, I was just like, holy crap, I almost feel like there might be something to this.
Well, I can add a production note to that. The dust was a giant challenge for them to animate that. So they really wanted the dust there, you know, like you could even call that like a light earth covering, where they animated one piece of dust, you know, copy paste, gave people carpal tunnel syndrome. And apparently in that shot, there are 2 million copied and pasted animated dust grains. So they went way out of their way to make that happen. I mean, it does look good, but yeah.
That was someone that was probably working for free, and they were just like, yeah, just Control C, Control V on this a few thousand times.
No, there's nasty stories in this, like somebody forgot to drop their kid off at the daycare, and they were in the back of the car while they were working at Pixar during this movie because of the time crunch, you know. It did say that Pixar was trying to keep people from working overtime, but you know how that works.
A little child sacrifice in the parking lot here and there might not hurt the movie, so feel free.
But the kid was fine in the end. But yeah, leaving your kid in the back of car is bad news, of course. But
well, not in the Disney parking lot. Nothing bad ever happens on Disney property.
No,
only once you drive off property, then your kid's screwed. But until you drive, if you just live there for the rest of your life on Disney property, then you'd probably be, at least you would never be declared dead. I guess we'll say that part.
Yeah, my note for that, I wasn't picking up on the Taurus stuff, but I was noting like there's kind of a Buddhist vibe of Woody's own zealousness is causing his own suffering. You know, if he wasn't so, you know, emotionally entrenched into, I guess, what you're calling a ritual, you know, he'd probably be a happier guy that wasn't having nightmares about being thrown into a trash can.
Well, actually, let me push these glasses up on the bridge of my nose a little bit. But the first nightmare that he had is him falling into a pile of Ace of Spades cards, and that's probably the first real obvious. And I don't know if know what I'm talking about. There's a scene, probably the most famous scene in my mind of Toy Story 2, where Andy picks up Woody and he's like, "Oh, that's right, you're broken. I don't want to play with you anymore." And he drops Woody, and it's all in like slow motion. And as he's falling down to the ground, there's like the floor is covered in just the Ace of Spades. It's like someone played 52 pickup, but every card in the deck was an Ace of Spades card. And this, again, if you're looking at in tarot lenses, this is kind of one of these things that represents like getting cut up and having to be reborn. It's not necessarily like a death card, because there is a death card in the major arcana, but this one represents being like severed and chopped and sliced and like repurposed, kind of like his arm is getting chopped off. But the rest of the movie kind of shows this. It shows Woody being like broken down, kind of being like unbrainwashed in a way, and then like rebrainwashed. I don't know. It's an interesting sequence of events that he goes through. But this scene in particular, why is he falling into just a stack of Ace of Spades? Like, to me, that was undoubtedly a real nod to the real symbol of the Ace of Swords.
You were saying you didn't remember Toy Story 4 that well. But I would say one very interesting thing about that movie, maybe a thing that does justify its existence, is Woody kind of breaks all of that programming in Toy Story 4. Now, he basically just adopts someone else's program, you could say, but he completely changes that paradigm in the fourth one. Whereas this one, it's kind of like he gets his faith restored. And then by the time we get to 4, well, he doesn't need that faith. There's no point in having it anymore.
Well, and it's interesting too how the challenges escalate throughout the movies. So at least in Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, because those are the freshest in my memory. But Toy Story 1, he almost gets lost and left in like another part of town, right? And that's kind of like the worst thing that might happen in Toy Story 1. Toy Story 2, he might get sold and like brought completely away from the family. In fact, he might get stolen and painted over and sent to another country that you'll never see again. But the worst thing that happens is that he still stays intact. He's just being far removed from his owner. Toy Story 3, the challenge is like, oh, well, now you can actually get ground up and incinerated and you just won't exist at all anymore. So I feel that like Toy Story 4, the most logical conclusion to like keep, one-upping that escalation is that he kind of has to have a full-on ego death. Like he has to actually he has to go like Chucky, right? He has to like melt in the factory and then be reborn just to know that he can over and over again.
Another thing, and this is my own, bit of synchronicities at work. 2 days ago, I did my season 3 Twilight Zone roundup. So if anybody doesn't want to be spoiled on a 60-year-old episode of television, I'm about to do it. But have you seen the episode 5 Characters in Search of an Exit?
You have to remind me what the plot is. I've seen every Twilight Zone, but I don't remember the names of all of them.
This is the one where there's like a clown and a military man and a ballerina, and they're all like in a black box room for the episode, trying to figure out what's going on.
I vaguely remember this.
Okay, well, the spoiler, they turn out to be toys in a Salvation Army trash can. And we were kind of pausing. Wow, this is kind of like the original Toy Story. I mean, you have Brave Little Toaster obviously gets some kudos for those too. But yeah, we're like, this episode of Twilight Zone is kind of like Toy Story Twilight Zone episode,
Well, I had a note here, and I guess I was just waiting until the end to see if there was worth mentioning it if we had time left, but I'll mention it now. But I'm really maybe to beyond like a concerning point, interested and fascinated about why do Woody and Bo Peep have like a romantic infatuation with each other? Why does Mr. Potato Head drop his jaw when he sees Barbie? Like what is the ultimate practical purpose that these toys have, what I would assume like sexual drives with each other? And the only thing that makes sense, if you think about it beyond just like, that's funny, right? It would have to be that they are truly embodying actual human souls, and that they're not just toys that have come to life or just toys that have some kind of energy in them that make them appear alive. Like they actually have to be embodying real humans with real vices and everything. That's the only thing that makes sense, because otherwise, like, Barbie doesn't even have genitalia, neither does Mr. Potato Head. Like we've seen it. We've seen the whole, well, maybe not Barbie, but we've seen
I've seen the whole potato head.
Right? Yeah, we've seen the whole damn potato. So I mean, like what would be the real, and I get it's just for like maybe for comedic effect, but no. Like these are actual things that Disney has created and put out into the universe that are going to live longer than anyone listening to this, right? Like they're going to outlive every single one of us. So there is something important to it, even if it wasn't intentional, but it's there now. So why does Mr. Potato Head get, like turned on when he sees a Barbie? I want to understand that.
We got to understand when one potato head meets another potato head and they love each other very much, they can open up each other's seats.
He's got a wife. She helped him pack before he left. And then the first thing he does is they go to the toy store and they're just ogling the Barbies.
Yeah, I did just write the snarky note at the beginning that the potato heads are not interracial dating, so Woody is more progressive for dating a Bo Peep, a different brand. Here's something.
Well, they're all after the Barbie, though, man. Barbie breaks that thing down.
Yeah. One thing, I guess maybe I've always been too much of a weird media savant, but I was thinking I had a few hand-me-down toys from like my dad or whatever, and I knew the IP of them, because Woody just seems to be like a mystery to everybody involved in this, and it's such a surprise when it turns out he's part of the Roundup gang. Why doesn't Woody know that? Buzz knows he's a Buzz Lightyear. He knows all about Space Command, Star Command, whatever. Woody should know about everything about the Roundup gang beforehand, which means somewhere he got like his mind wiped or something, like C-3PO.
It might just indicate that Andy's dad is neglectful, because you don't really see him very often. You actually see his mom at this point, but maybe his dad's just neglectful. Like he gave him the toy, but never actually spent time like explaining the toy or talking to him or relating to him. Just here's a toy.
That could be it. Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to work out this, the metaphysics of Toy Story, which actually is fun to do. But yeah, it's just Buzz. That's weird. Buzz, though deluded, Buzz always knows who he is, and Woody doesn't know who he is at all. He has to be shown a bunch of videotapes to even like figure it out.
Well, no one knows who Woody is. Like none of his toys, but everyone knows who Buzz is because even when they got Buzz, Buzz had commercials airing at the same time. He even sees himself. That's like the big revelation that Buzz kind of has in the first movie, right? But everyone else has seen the commercials. They all know about Buzz Lightyear.
Maybe it's like the toy's identity, like as the IP becomes less in the real world, the toy's identity becomes less, or maybe their real identity comes more into play. We get the real Woody because, you know, because I don't know, but then Stinky Pete is completely different on the TV show than he is in the box. So because he's Kelsey Grammer, right? I'm overthinking it for sure, but I mean that's kind of what we're here for. So,
but also the character, they kind of show this, that the character portrayed on TV is not necessarily the same character that's the toy is, and I don't know if that's because the character on TV was fake, because they clearly were not the toys, right? The toys were based on the TV show, but the actual character that was on the TV show was like a puppet being played by a puppeteer. So maybe like there's no kind of correlation between how they act on TV versus how they act in person, because the one sort of thing that stands out is that when Buzz Lightyear finds all of his clones in like a Matrix type scene, right, where you're in this big store and everywhere you look it's just more Buzz Lightyears. It reminded me of the scene when Neo wakes up inside, or outside the Matrix, and it's just like pods of people just in incubator tubes. And that's kind of what Buzz Lightyear is here. They're all in like the plastic cages. You know what I mean?
I'm going to pause that could have been inspired by The Matrix because of that came out in May, and Toy Story 2 is notorious for having this 9-month compressed production. So I bet someone saw The Matrix and very likely could have come in and say, hey, I've got a great idea. We're still looking to pad a few minutes out of this movie. Let's make this shot. It'll be cool. And it'll resonate.
It's possible. And it's also possible that of all the people on the production teams and creative teams, there's probably cross-pollination and someone saw early cuts of one or the other. It might be just as possible that someone saw an early render of Toy Story 2 before they even decided to turn it into a movie and stole that and put it into the Matrix. So, I mean, that's also a real possibility.
Yeah, I think the Wachowskis did have that script bouncing around for a while, but in terms of production design, who knows, So... but again, it's 1999. I just recently read a book that just was kind of like going for the idea that 1999 is kind of a, one of the more important years in movies. So I've been a little fascinated with that idea, with Toy Story 2 very much fitting into that sort of paradigm. So
we didn't know what we had.
I guess I didn't have a neglectful dad, but as a child, I knew who Howdy Doody was. I didn't watch Howdy Doody. I didn't like Howdy Doody, but
right, I knew who he was. You probably found out from your dad.
Yeah. He would have been saying weird lines from that. As far as the characters being different, I guess that has now been canonized since they put out the Lightyear movie a few years ago. Did not want to hire Tim Allen and put Chris Pratt in the voice instead. So that kind of fits the character in the movie is definitely different than the toy character that you have.
Right, and in this one, it's clear that when Woody's watching himself on TV, that those are not Woody toys, and that he is a toy based on the puppet. So they wouldn't be, even if the puppets came to life, which is also an interesting concept. Because I was thinking too, when Woody is going to save, what's the damn penguin's name? Squeaker?
Wheezy.
Wheezy. When Woody's going to save Wheezy at the very beginning of the movie from the yard sale, all I could think about was like, how many other poor things that are like screaming for them to be saved is Woody just like bypassing, and all he cares about is this stupid Wheezy penguin. But what if there's like a fork holder or like one of those little corn on the cob things that you stick in the side so you don't burn your fingers? Like potentially all of those things could be, possessing human souls of some kind. I don't know. I just imagine that stupid penguin was not the only thing at that yard sale that had some sort of a consciousness in it that wanted to go back into the house.
Well, hey, it's like the time I saved the Cookie Monster, Lotso Bear back there, and Dumbo from the garbage bag, right? There were other toys I did not save. The very large Minnie Mouse in a bear suit that went to wherever it went. The very large impractical poo that someone gave us when my daughter was born, that went bye-bye.
Someone gave you poo for your daughter's birthday? That's not a friend. That's not a friend. I'm just letting you know.
Okay. But I do have a photo of her doing the tea party for her stuffed animals. And at that point, the poo is actually larger than her, which is kind of hysterical. I mean, she's 14 now. She's much bigger than the poo now, but yeah. That's another weird thing about Buzz, though, is he seems to be the only fully delusional toy. All the other toys don't need to be told they're toys. A lot of them know who they are, like character IP wise. But yeah, Buzz is the only one that has to be forcibly explained to him that he's a toy.
Right. Well, just like Neo in the Matrix, the second that he shows up, like they kind of have to keep instructing him how the actual world works, right? Like even when they approach him in the Matrix, he doesn't know about the whole like red pill and blue pill and you're going to get like unjacked and see this completely different reality. He doesn't really understand a lot of that stuff until it happens to him. And I kind of feel that that's Buzz Lightyear's whole shtick. And that's why the scene of him inside the toy store looks so damn similar to Neo waking up in all those little pods, because he's the newest one. He's the newest toy that Andy has, like fresh out of the package.
Although Zurg is delusional too, isn't he, once he comes out of the packaging?
Right. And Zurg, I had to point out, is the damn Chernobog silhouette. If you look at him, he's Chernobog.
For sure. Voiced by Andrew Stanton, who will later be directing Pixar movies, and John Carter. A movie I'll stand behind a little bit. I think John Carter's a pretty good movie with they just badly miscast the lead in that one, is my take on John Carter.
They
both
should
leads
have
actually.
In retrospect, the best person that could have possibly played John Carter and maintained vision with Edgar Rice Burroughs, Mel Gibson. Tell me I'm wrong.
He'd have to be younger, though. It would have been at least 90s, if not 80s Mel Gibson. Mad Max era Mel Gibson? Hell yeah. That's perfect. I mean, you could almost watch The Road Warrior as that, if you want to call that Mars or something. Well, no, I guess Burroughs' Mars is a little more fantastical, but getting back to this. Oh yeah, I was thinking when Woody fully loses his arm, I was like, is Woody's missing arm the closest Disney has come to body horror? And then Pleasure Island from Pinocchio popped back in my brain. So no, definitely not.
Yeah, and this one, everyone kind of knows that you can just stitch the arm back on, except Woody. I mean, Woody obviously freaks out quite a bit because he lost his arm. But every single other toy that he comes into contact is just like, oh, that's fine. They'll just stitch that thing back on, which almost shows a little bit of that delusion. Like Woody still has some of it. He doesn't realize like all the rules of this world that he's in yet.
Yeah, but if you were missing your arm right now, everyone's like, it's fine. You'd be like, get it back as soon as possible. This sucks,
Maybe, but I mean, look at Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head willingly takes his arms and his eyes and his nose off, like without any sort of qualms, because he understands the rules of the world that he lives in. And the reason that I think this kind of fits back into this like Mithras thing, because Andy is Mithras. In this story, because if Woody is the cowboy or the bull man or just the Taurus, then Andy is the one that has to slay the bull in order to show the bull that it's going to just be reborn anyways. And there's something very specific about this, because Andy's the one that hurts Woody originally. He's the one that tears him a little bit right before the dog comes and licks the wound, I would arguably say. But like even after this happens, he gets put back up onto the shelf. And right next to him, there's this dog or this red book called Dog Island on it. And I think that some of that kind of like reflects this thing that he's going through. But that also when Andy's mom is like, we can fix him on the way to camp. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, I'll leave him here. And I think that whole entire thing is because even Mithras knows that the bull's going to be fine. Like there's nothing, even though he ripped his arm off, he's still going to be completely fine. He's going to be as good as new because mom's going to come back and stitch him. And all the toys kind of know this too. Almost everyone knows that he's going to be completely fine except for Woody.
I actually wrote in my notes, like, I didn't write Andy as Mithras. I wrote Andy as a god. But then I was thinking Emily too. We'll be talking about Jessie a bit, her owner. And I was like, well, the children, like, this makes all children into archons. Like you were the archon of your toys. You know, I'm the archon of the Star Wars crap I have right next to me at the moment. So.
Well, and also in this reality, I was thinking that too. Like, if Andy's a god, but that also means that we as viewers are almost superior to Andy in a way, because we know stuff that Andy doesn't know. So if he is a god to these toys, which he clearly is a god to them, or the demiurge, we've mentioned that before, but if he's a god to the toys, what are we to Andy, knowing that Andy's just a 3D animation that's limited in, you know, his knowledge?
Could that kind of subliminally be why Toy Story is so wildly popular? Especially when you're young, you watch this and you feel like a god because you're higher than Andy. The toys are at the bottom. You are the demiurge. Andy is simply an archon.
Right, or he's Mithras and you're an actual god. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
watching this all unfold. I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. But yeah, I think that there is something to be said about movies where, even on a subconscious level, it makes you feel like you are a god of some kind. Like, I remember, like, the video games, there was one called Black and White, that you got to just play, literally got to play God. And there was another one, like a big hand would go around and you could, you know, decide which villagers to, like, flick out of the town or whatever.
Yeah, so that might, you know, you get like a little rush. That could really be like the subliminal charm of these movies in a way. So and you get to talk about the toys' existential dread and, you know, minute detail without really having to think about your own.
Right, and you can see dismemberment without any of the gore.
Yeah.
Right, like, you actually see him lose his arm, but they can portray it in a way that I guess it doesn't scare kids, and it doesn't like trigger that body horror instinct that some people would be repulsed by, right? And all these other, like, again, with Buzz Lightyear waking up, or like realizing that there's this whole freaking store full of clones of him, and that you couldn't even sort of tell him the difference between him and one of his clones. And when he gets put into one of these boxes, it's clear that all the knowledge in the world that he's gained after, you know, understanding Andy and understanding himself, he still has all the limitations of any dumb toy that's still stuck in the box and doesn't know anything about the outside world. Like, there's literally no advantage that he's been given. And if anything, it would almost be like torture, right? Like, all those other Buzz Lightyears, like thousands of them in the movie, they're all fine knowing that they're just like this thing in this box, and there's not like, I must kill Zurg. Like, that's the only thing going on in their mind. But imagine if just one of those was the actual Buzz Lightyear. He's just tortured mentally, right? Forever. I need to get back to Andy. This isn't even real. We're in a store. Someone listen to me. Like, the existential concept of that is, I don't know, it's fascinating for a children's movie.
Yeah, again, head back for the Twilight Zone episode, 5 characters in search of an exit. That's what they're doing the whole time, where, you know, at some point they realize, we're not getting hungry. I don't think we need food. You know, it's like, it's really weird like that. Let's see. Now, I just mentioned Jessie. I guess we should talk a little bit about Jessie. I was watching it last night thinking, is this the most bipolar character in, like, film history?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that they also, or at least in the final effect, was that she's like a non-sexualized version of Woody, because it almost would be implied that within the universe of Woody's, you know, like Howdy Doody style show, that she's almost his, like, girlfriend, but they intentionally make it not like that because he's got Bo Peep back home, and I guess they didn't want to introduce that as sort of like a love triangle concept. Maybe that would have been too adult for, like, the kid audience, but part of them doing that makes her seem like a bipolar child almost. Like, she almost seems like a kid.
As the movies go on, I think especially by 4, I think they're kind of pushing, they're shipping her and Buzz.
Right, but in this movie, she almost seems like she would not be able to have a relationship on her own. She might even wear, like, a helmet out in public. That like
she's dating crazy, but then she does have PTSD, I guess, which they tell us through a depressing song by Sarah McLachlan or something.
well, yeah, because they've been stuck in storage for so long, and that's where she starts snapping. She's like, I can't go back in there. It's like she's been in the hole for a while, and that's kind of how that she describes it, as being like in this like dark closet. But I was also wondering, maybe too deeply, but what their idea of Shangri-La is going to this museum in Japan somewhere, right? Like that's the whole plot line, is they actually want to go there because then they can be appreciated. But the whole thing is that they haven't been played with by kids, and that's what they're missing from their lives. And also, if you're in a dark closet, then that technically, even if you can't see anything, you're free to like move around and be yourself and do all the things, right? Have a conversation. But if you're in a freaking museum where people are just staring at you all the time, doesn't that mean that you're now like dead for most of your life? Like you're in this weird state where you can't move around, you can't talk, you can't interact at all. You have to pretend like you're an inanimate object, versus if you're in storage, you don't have to pretend like you're an inanimate object at all because no one's there to see it.
Night at the museum, they all come alive with Ben Stiller after dark. Maybe. But they are in glass cases, so that's gotta suck. I mean, it's clear that Stinky Pete does not, well, he does come out of his box, but it's, he's
right,
been in his box.
Toy Story rules means that even if it were after dark, if a person is looking at you have to be inanimate still.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that if you're in your packaging, I guess that keeps you in a permanent coffin. Where you're just smiling and staring out, with all of the dread, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. It's almost like more torture to show any of these toys love at any point, or let them be like, are they telling us not to buy toys? Because if you don't buy a toy, if you don't buy that Buzz Lightyear at Toys R Us or whatever, then at least it gets to live on. Like it can be like, what's the guy's name? Cyrus, where he's like, just give me the steak, put me back into the Matrix and give me that nice steak dinner.
Cypher,
like I'm happy. That's Buzz Lightyear, right? That's Cyrus. But that is Buzz Lightyear in this movie. And then a kid going up and actually helping a toy wake up would be the worst thing you could possibly do to him, because now it's like Neo, but then you force him to go back into the Matrix.
Where there's a scene where Jesse's like, "This is the last time I'm going to see the sun." I'm like, wow, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Again, I guess she has reason for her wild mood swings, It's,
maybe, I don't know, because I feel like I would rather live in darkness and freedom than live in light but not be able to move or talk or have any sort of reaction to the outside world.
That's my whole point, that all of this stuff is so freaking dark, but since they're toys and we know more than Andy, we can just sit here or rise above it all and pick it apart grain by grain. If we were watching if we're watching Max von Sydow play chess with death, now we have to consider our own mortality more. It's not as fun to watch. Great movie, but not necessarily a fun watch, right?
And I gotta note this too. I've forgot I had this note that when Andy's going off to camp and all this happens and he rips Buzz's shoulder and the dog comes in and licks him, like that whole aspect of this I think it's called Tordonnery, or anyways, this Mithraic rite. When Andy shows up, he's wearing a freaking shirt that's got a bull's head on it with the horns and an inverted black triangle behind it, which usually denotes like a psychological or psychic approach, like a spiritual versus the mundane, which would be like an upside triangle. And then it also has these 3 R's in it, and the 3 R's also correlate to the 3 steps of, I think it's called Negrita, which is this alchemical process where you have to destroy something and break it down into its raw components so that you can rebuild it back up again. And when you rebuild it back up again, that's called the red process. The Negriti process is the black process, and then the red is basically the magnum opus. That's when you get it to its highest possible state. So I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting because there's so much of that symbolism of tearing Woody up and breaking him down, falling onto a deck of black cards. And then as he comes back out of this isolated dog island with like the red book, the red cube, and all the Saturn imagery that it started out with. I don't know. I know a lot of these are just like wild shots from the hip and like the shooting gallery, but like it feels like there's almost like a holographic image coming together. If you look at all these things individually up close, they seem like they're kind of unconnected. But when you step back, the fact that all these things exist and almost all the stuff that I'm mentioning too is in the first 10 minutes of the movie too. It's not even spread out throughout like the whole hour and 30 something minutes. It's within the first 10.
They don't tell you where Andy's summer camp is. So I'm assuming his summer camp is at Bohemian Grove and he will not care tomorrow.
Well, the shirt that he's wearing, I think, is that. I don't know if I noted what it said on the shirt. It had the 3 R's. But that was where he was going. It was like the Rough Rider Ranch or something. That's not the name of it. That would actually be a little bit creepy. But it was like the RR Ranch. And he's got his cowboy hat on, like a big one. And that's why he was so excited to have Woody come along with him, I think, because it was going to be like this Western rodeo feel.
Ah, right. Okay. My snark didn't quite work. Hey, you could do that. Maybe it's a theme out there that week. Here's one. I guess we'll be talking about this a little more with Toy Story 3. One criticism you could have against Lotso, who of course is behind me, is 2 and 3 basically kind of sort of have the same villain.
Well, I mean, 3 ultimately the villain is fire.
Yeah, but Lotso does suck in a similar way to Stinky Pete, and they get very similar fates. Actually, Stinky Pete gets a better fate. He's just going to get drawn on, where Lotso lives on the front of a truck in a dump now.
Well, Stinky Pete, in my opinion, is so when Woody goes and he discovers this room of all the different things. They say this very explicitly. It's like, you don't even know who you are. You know, you need to learn about who you are. And that's really clear because he's having almost a Buzz Lightyear moment where he's discovering that his whole reality is not like it was. But I think that the horse and Jesse and the prospector, Stinky Pete, I think all of them are different aspects of Woody that he hasn't integrated yet. So that's why Jessie is this like bipolar anima. Like she's basically the feminine energy that Woody doesn't have. And she also represents some of the masculine energy that he seems to have lost. Like she's ready to go out and fight. She wants to adventure. Like she's got some of that vigor that I think that maybe Woody's almost lost from being domesticated by Andy for a while. So that's part of the reintegration. And then the prospector, Stinky Pete, is clearly sort of like his shadow because Stinky Pete's like willing to do the things that Woody and Jesse aren't, either willing or able to do. But all 3 of them combined, like that is like he needs to reintegrate all of those things back into his own personality. And that is the entire point of him getting ripped apart and thrown into this whole adventure, is so that he can go and meet these other aspects of his personality, reintegrate them, and then bring it back to his original home again.
Do we have to paint Bullseye into this picture too, don't we? Youthful idealism, comic relief. What's Bullseye then?
Bullseye is the reminder of Woody's own undying loyalty to Andy, because he kind of forgets that a little bit as he's becoming infatuated with himself. Like, oh my God, look, I'm a toy, I'm a calendar, I'm this big cutout, I'm on TV. But then when he starts looking at Bullseye, Bullseye at some points reminds him of, I can't remember the exact moment, but he like reminds him of Andy, because of, I think, in the way that Bullseye has got this like loyalty and like ready to go. And that's kind of, I think, what bonds Woody to Andy too, is that exact same sort of undying loyalty. Because that's kind of what he shows all throughout Toy Story 1, almost to like being naive, right? He's like, no, Andy's the god. Andy will always save us. Andy's always there.
I'm going to continue throwing the word zealot on him.
Yeah, he's a zealot.
I mean, yeah, it's not just a belief, it's a zealot tree thing. The other weird thing about Bullseye and fitting him into the picture you were just painting, I was like, he's the one that has like zero agency. He's going to do whatever Woody chooses in the end. Whereas Stinky Pete's going to go against him, and Jesse's going to at least butt heads a little bit about the decisions Woody's making. Bullseye just like whatever, man.
Right, and Bullseye doesn't talk, even though almost every other animal toy does talk. You know, like the Slinky Dog talks, and that's a dog, right? So how come Bullseye, a horse, which is arguably smarter in the animal world than a dog would be in the animal world, yet Bullseye is too dumb to have agency and talk? This is almost like a Pluto Goofy situation in a weird way.
Yeah, but that puts Bullseye on a slightly lower level of consciousness than the other toys. And
Correct,
then there's
which is
the dog who's between. It's like it's trying to work out those levels is so weird.
Well, and I think that's why the dog, at least Bullseye, makes sense, or the horse makes sense as this correlation, because the dog is to Woody as Woody is to Andy. So that's what, like, the continuity. And there's another really interesting one here too, is that Al, the guy that steals Woody, he's kind of like the ultimate bad guy in this movie, right? He's like the arch villain that causes all of the problems. But it's also weird because he himself is like possessed by these toys. Like he's stealing them, but they've clearly like taken over his entire life. He's got a big toy store. He's stealing toys from children. They've bypassed all his morality, and he's absolutely incensed with the material world, right? And he puts on this suit, and his big shtick is that he's the chicken guy. They literally call him the chicken guy. And I was like, man, I'm already talking about Mithras and the Zodiac and like all this. And you know who fits into that as a chicken is freaking Abraxas. And Abraxas's role in the Gnostic sort of, canon is that he's the one that causes all the chaos and all the disruption, but he's also represents a complete inversion. So you've got this role that Al is playing, and maybe I'll call him L instead of Al because that also fits into this. So the role that L is playing in this big astro-theological drama of Toy Story 2 is that he's causing this constant like torture and revolution and things being torn apart and put back together, but it's ultimately for the good, because what happens is that Woody gets to reintegrate all these different parts of his psyche so that he can go back as a new reborn sort of character, which is exactly what the freaking bull does in the Mithraic rites. He dies, he comes back reborn to bigger and better than ever. So I don't know, it feels like Al or L as Abraxas fits this exact mold perfectly, because he is the catalyst for all this happening. If he didn't steal Woody originally, the movie ends. The mom brings the thing back in. She goes, "Oh, here's Woody. Let me stitch him up." Gives him back to Andy. Movie, credits scroll.
It's kind of like your L, whatever, is the force of nature, but the character of him as a person is just a big dumb dork who's not beyond stealing something from a garage sale. Whereas, Stinky Pete, I guess I come across being like, oh, the villain of the movie because, he's got malice in his heart. His heart is full of hate, I
don't know, though. I think he's just the shadow of Woody. He just represents all of the hate and malice that Woody should be able to have a healthy amount of, even if it's suppressed, but he has just none of it. He has a little bit in the very first movie when
that's
he's
what I'll say. The first one he's got a little bit because
So would you say that Woody's trying to set Buzz up in the first movie is any worse or better than his shadow counterpart here with Stinky Pete?
That's that could have made it more interesting. Where the original, we were talking in the first one, originally Woody was supposed to be a little bit more of a scoundrel, which might have made that resonate more in this movie. But I mean, when they made the first one, they didn't know this one yet, so this
says
was
you.
Written. Says me. Well, so suggests the production history. I mean, the sequel originated. They even thought about just doing it like Walt Disney, 2D animation. So I'm kind of
that would have been so weird. That would have been.
It would have been too weird. Yeah, that would have been too weird. But it is, and also it would have been like Return to Jafar level, which is to say not very good, probably. But that was the thing. They were kind of hitting batting above their average, so they got put into the theaters instead. So, we're putting a cinematic universe with no actual, no, the physics. You can't really make sense of the physics, but I'm just sitting here thinking of the consciousness. I'm like, you know what? This has to be a scale in the end. Like, it's all one thing, right? So that's why I'm starting to think where the dog is her bullseye.
It's the whole rebirth cycle. So yeah, it has to start and end the exact same way. And another good example of this is when they kind of tell Woody about the end of his show. So he was like, "Oh, what happens?" Like they have this whole thing, and Woody's gonna go and save somebody, and they cut right as Woody's like jump. This is the TV show Woody. Right as Woody's jumping over a big canyon, and then it's like, find out next week if Woody, does Woody make it over the canyon? Does he save, like the damsel in distress? Tune in next week. And then he's like, what happens? And they say, well, Sputnik launched, and as soon as Sputnik launched, all the kids wanted to play with space toys and astronaut toys, so they never finished the series, and that's kind of what ended like his whole entire original franchise. Which is kind of interesting because again, it represents this like cyclical, never-ending death and rebirth. Because even the OG Woody that killed the black and white TV show got killed by space toys, which is in Toy Story 1. Woody is what? He's afraid that he's going to be completely redundant because of a new space toy. So that's just one other example of Woody being this like cycle of death and rebirth constantly.
This is, I guess, based on some Eastern ideas, but I'm not giving specific thing because I read them in one of Jane Roberts' Seth material books. But the idea that going with reincarnation, your first incarnations would be as like a rock or something, just to get used to existing in this plane, right? And then you work up to animal. You're now interacting, so satisfying basic needs, and now you're people. And you have to keep on facing the same challenge, like you're mentioning. Woody's always going to get surpassed by something newer and shinier than him, and he's going to have to eventually learn how to deal with it. And there's many Woodies that get many chances to deal with it.
I like that theory. I don't know if I agree with it, and mine is a little bit more, I guess, like Rosicrucian leaning, or at least my interpretation of some of this. But it's like, I guess the best way that I can paraphrase it and show that I probably don't understand anything at all, actually, but that if you're in this world where you start as like a soul inside of a rock, and once you prove yourself, you get to be a frog, and once you prove yourself, you get to be a dog and a cat, and like you work yourself all the way up to a human. If we're like the top, or a dolphin or an octopus, whatever you think the highest level of consciousness is on the planet. And it's like this big escalation. But if you go back to like the first building blocks, how would a rock prove itself worthy to become a frog? Like, is there something that like it's just not, it like sucks at being a rock? And then the same thing with a frog. Like, could a frog just suck at being a dick frog, and now he's just going to be a frog forever because he's such a shitty frog? Because ultimately that's what we apply to the top of that scale, is that all of a sudden as a human, well, now you got to prove yourself and make sure that you've done all the right things. Like, at what point in that sliding scale is that applied? Does the rock have things that are good and bad? Does the goat have good and bad things? Like, at what point is
I
it
think
like,
the only idea
morality
for the rock, I think the only idea for the rock is that it exists, so it doesn't do anything good or
so
bad.
it just by default gets to upgrade to the next level on the next cycle or whatever?
Correct. A rock maybe doesn't need that many cycles. It's just like, it's like a orientation to the universe. Then the frog is like, okay, now we're going to start working controls. And yeah, you could be a dick frog, right? You could be a bad frog for a while. I was, I teach kids that are like 3, 4, 5 years old, and a lot of them, I mean, so then this has nothing to do with like if they're likable or not. But some kids, I'm like, they've been around the block a few times, and some kids I'm like, yeah, they don't seem too used to this reality, as they're repeatedly bashing their head against the wall for no reason, Whereas another kid sitting there like organizing everything perfectly, and I'm like, like putting all this attention to detail. The other kid's bashing his head into a wall. So,
well, he might be an artist someday. You don't know. Maybe
I like the kid bashing his head into the wall better. It's just, but I'm like, that's not like experienced thing to do. And then this other young child is doing something that seems like an experienced thing to do. Maybe they're more boring, maybe they're less fun. So like I said, it doesn't have to do with like how much I like them. It's just like how awkward or not do they seem functioning, in the first couple of years of life in this reality.
Well, another like a little bit woo-woo of a Rosicrucian approach on that one is that if you imagine every one of or if you took like 5 kids, right? 5 of the ones that you kind of have in mind that are variously, different skilled socially and what have you. Imagine that's like those 5 kids are actually just like the hand of some god, and those are the 5 fingers, and you're just seeing the 5 fingers move around, not realizing that they're all connected to a hand. So the kid that's hitting his head against the wall all the time, maybe that's just like the pinky or the ring finger, like like a lesser used finger that doesn't have the same amount of coordination that you would expect to have an index finger.
Yeah, it could be something like that. I know I had a class a few months ago where I just had one girl who was never going to come into the classroom and 2 guys who were just like impossible. So in the end, the class ended up being, they turned out the lights. One of them started playing a ukulele like a rock star, and another was like swinging around a flashlight on a string like a strobe light. And I was like, well, as long as the flashlight, they're having fun. They did it for like 20 minutes. I'm like, as long as the flashlight doesn't fly off and break something, I guess we're good. Also, it was really funny to watch. But I was like, yeah, that was a case where the hand's going to do its thing, and there's not much I can do to change that. Go with the flow, So that is one of Woody's biggest problems. Buzz, once he is no longer delusional, he's very good with going with the flow. Buzz is kind of zen. Woody is not. Woody's always having a crisis.
Yeah, he's always, because I would argue he has not integrated all the different facets of the psyche, which is the entire point of Toy Story 2, is for Woody to die and be reborn with all the different components that he hadn't had up until this point. Because I guess Buzz, in a way, like he kind of came out as this complete bumpkin, but as soon as he snapped in, once he realized that this was the reality, like he embraced it fully, and he kind of is like a full-blown character that has pros and cons, and like he understands himself, and Woody never got that.
And he is a Neo within this universe. Like even the deluded Buzz pulls off that ridiculous trick where he's flying and, when he's doing in the elevator, like doing things he can't do. The universe is just working with him really hard. And the universe is usually working very hard against Woody.
I like that. Now we'll say that they're both Neo, but Buzz Lightyear is Neo after he learns how to fly a helicopter or whatever. And Woody is Neo like when he's still jumping off the edge of the building and falls every time.
Yeah. Which by the time we get to 4, that maybe that's where Woody's starting to like work it out himself a little better, because he spends the first 3 movies being such a zealot. Once he gets past that, he can, activate himself, self-actualization,
I think that you're onto something, because this movie, more than the other ones, like Woody really becomes full of himself. In the first movie, Buzz Lightyear is kind of full of himself, and a lot of people are intimidated by Buzz because he's like this brand new shiny thing. He's got all the bells and whistles and like activated joints, like all this stuff that no other toy they've ever seen has. And in this movie, Woody gets a little taste of ego, because he's in this room that's like a shrine to him and him alone, and he almost forgets about Andy throughout that, because he's so infatuated with himself, which again, it feels like that Saturn worship, man. And even on the Time magazine, where they show a Sputnik article in the bottom, which kind of foreshadows the downfall of Woody, and like this first edition of the spacemen taking over from the bullmen or the cowboys. But even on that magazine, it says Woody, the brightest star of Saturday morning, which sounds like that's Saturn worship, right?
Saturn Day.
He's the brightest star of Saturday. That's Saturn worship.
Yeah. And then Buzz is the new god to replace the old god. I don't know. I was just looking through my notes for anything else I wanted to bring up. I guess I had 2 quick squibs to throw out there. One, this is the start of Barbie's cinematic journey, which is now a notable thing in 2024. I was just kind of like, I don't even know if I have anything specifically to say about that, other than like, oh, this, you can draw a line here to a massive pop culture in the modern day.
Well, there still hasn't been a real Barbie movie with Barbie as like a plastic doll, and this one gives a little bit of a glimpse at how absolutely creepy that could be, and I think there's something to it.
So maybe they
And
made a good choice.
I actually really liked the new Barbie movie for reasons that most people won't get, but the very ending, a little bit of a spoiler, although it's really hard to spoil the Barbie movie, the same way it's hard to spoil a Kubrick movie. But the Barbie movie at the very end shows one of the most accurate reproductions of true MK Ultra, or I would even say Project Monarch programming slash deprogramming. The entire formula that's outlined by Fritz Springmeier in his formula to create an undetectable mind-controlled Illuminati slave. I think it's a mouthful, that book title. But the exact things that he kind of describes as how you can brainwash someone is kind of what they put Ken through at the end of the movie, like beat for freaking beat. And it made me wonder if there was someone in the writer's room that knew about Fritz Springmeier and they were just like, let's just throw these couple details in there. So, anyways, Barbie is worth watching for the mind control references alone.
And talk about mirrors upon mirrors in that movie. If you're going to, the first scene of Toy Story 2, that's like just doing it over and over and over again,
Well, and Barbie is one of the examples that I've seen cited as, oh man, you might have to correct me here, but whenever they show like the 6 C's of China or like the 7 C, like a certain way that they portray lines when they show over China, one of them is like denoting Taiwan has some sort of agency, and another one completely bypasses that agency. And Barbie does the latter. They do like the pro-China version of the map. So there were people that were sort of upset that they showed like China's version of the maritime boundaries.
Yeah, I remember seeing some articles about that. I like that movie pretty well. Is also the one thing that sticks in my craw is the scene where all the Kens play the guitar at Barbie. It was pretty
That's
clear.
The one, dude. That's the one where they're getting brainwashed essentially, or mind controlled.
Okay. Well, my personal thing is Gibson clearly was doing product placement. So Ryan Gosling's playing a really nice one I can't afford. And every other Ken is playing the exact same model of Gibson I play. I don't know how I feel about that.
You don't have the Ken version?
Well, I have all the other Ken. They're all Ken, right? So I have the other Kens. I would like the Gosling one. That's a nice guitar. That one costs 4,000. Mine costs 1,000.
That's exactly the scene I'm talking about, because the whole plot of that scene is that they're supposed to be love bombing Ken and just making him feel like he's like the most special person on the world and everything. And they basically say that at the exact moment that he feels like he's the most in love and the most vulnerable, that's when you basically trash him and you get up and you leave him, and that'll fry his brain essentially. That process of love bombing someone and then showing them just complete apathy at the very moment that they feel vulnerable and loved. That is how you kind of brainwash someone and turn them into like a program killer.
Right, yo. I was distracted by the guitars. That's funny. Okay. I have only seen it once, so I'll get back to it at some point. Probably when I can get it for like $5 on Blu-ray or something. That's usually what happens these days. That's why I was watching Crimson Tide last night. The other one, just since we're always playing things out, which we did not agree that says Sex in the Air on Lion King. I think more like SFX, but
I think SFX, yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of this, I was, Buzz just got a stiffy, didn't he, when he first sees Jesse and his wings go up?
I mean, that's what I was talking about. The same thing in the car when they drive by all the Barbies. Like everyone in the car clearly is having some sort of physiological reaction. Like they all drop their jaws and their eyes widen. And it's like, because why? Like, what is the insinuation here? Let's say things go their way. What does that entail? You know what I mean?
Some really kinky stuff. That's what it entails.
And I have one final note, a little bit of leave it on a weird place here.
Yeah, why not?
Very clearly in the very ending blooper reel, they show the prospector, Stinky Pete, and he's in his box with two twin Barbies. And he basically is telling them like, oh wow, so you're exact twins, huh? Hey, I think I might be able to get you into, Toy Story 3. I think that's what he's saying to them, and they're like giggling on, and they I think Woody or someone turns him around, then he realizes he's being recorded, and he kind of like ends the conversation there. But the whole premise is he's literally Weinstein, right? He's Harvey Weinstein telling them to like get onto the casting couch and he'll get them into the third movie. And not to I hate the whole like, you could never make this movie today. I'm just thinking like this is some like pre Me Too material where it's
Yeah.
totally acceptable to make a joke about this like stinky Pete old man hitting on these two twin sisters and implying that they do some sort of action for him that he'll get them into a movie. And I imagine you're watching that movie with your kids and you're like, he's gonna sexually assault them.
And it was already public knowledge about Weinstein, and not public, at least industry knowledge in 1999. It's like it wasn't like a secret that he was up to these sort of things. I mean, the Weinsteins were just. I'm reading a book written by Pierre Eckstein Stein, something early 2000s, right? Talking about the 90s independent film industry, a lot about the Weinsteins and about what monsters they are in this book from like 2002.
Yeah, no one saw it coming. How could you?
So yeah, that's where I am. Oh, the last thing that from this movie that usually comes to my mind. Again, I teach kids. I often do crafts, and I always have the threader moment. Or your hands are shaking and then you do it perfectly. So I get that feeling a lot. It's kind of exciting. But yeah. So was that the end of your line of notes there?
Yeah. What's the next movie up?
Oh, you're not gonna like it. It's Fantasia 2000. Came out a month and a half.
So when we did our very first episode of Occult Disney, which was like damn near over 50 episodes ago, right? Are we on 50s yet?
I think we're somewhere in the 40s, but you're close.
We're close to 50. So I guess 50 episodes ago, when we did the very first Fantasia, I accidentally downloaded Fantasia 2000. And I remember watching maybe like 20 to 30 minutes in and just thinking like, God, this is so much worse than I remember it being. Like, why is this so bad? Was I just wrong? And then I realized, I'm watching whatever the hell monstrosity this thing is. And went back and watched the original, and I was like, oh my God, thank God. I'm not going crazy. There's actually a decent version of Fantasia out there. But ever since then, can't we just skip it? Like, haven't we already done Fantasia? What are we supposed to get out of Fantasia 2000?
You get the Firebird. The Firebird's there. You get a sequence that Eisner insisted be in there and nobody wanted to animate or put in the movie. Yeah. And like you said, we can revisit like some thoughts from the original as well.
I want to propose too that we include Salvador Dali's short that didn't necessarily make it all the way in.
Hell yeah.
Any of the releases.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that one's great. I mean, so we have to watch it in like kind of a weird format if I remember. Like it's not complete. Did they eventually completed it, didn't they?
I think they completed it, but it was post, like I think it was after Salvador Dali died and everything. So
that's correct.
He didn't get to oversee like every final. I assume that if he were alive, it might have looked different than the version that we got to see. But it's still worth. I mean, imagine a Salvador Dali short in a freaking Disney movie, and that was supposed to be in the original one, right?
Yeah. I think it's on my Blu-ray, so it actually makes sense to do that.
Right on. So I know make it worth it, I guess.
Yeah, I know we skipped the Pixar shorts, and then maybe we'll hit all of those at one time or something. Because it is interesting that when you watch Pixar movies, they usually don't. You have to choose the. It doesn't go with the movie anymore. I guess I'm just thinking of VHS days when you would get it all together on disc. It's sometimes not there, I want to say.
Well, and I'm curious too. I guess I'll say this for anyone that adds comments, and bless you all that do add comments, and especially if I'm premiering this on my channel and I've got like a live chat. But a fleeting idea, might be a good idea, might be a bad idea. But what if we started to burn the candle on both ends a little bit, so that once we get to a certain movie, or let's say after Fantasia or whatever, We can keep going in chronological order, but we will already know every theatrical release that's going to come out between, say, the year 2000 and the year 2024. So we technically know what movie is going to be 51 and what movie is going to be 101. So we could theoretically start doing newer Disney movies too, but it would just be like we would issue episode 107 and then we would go to episode 54 and then we would go to episode 106 and then go to episode 55. You know what I mean? So like literally working on both ends. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. If anyone think that that's a good idea or a bad idea, drop it in the comments. What do you think, Matt? Is that a good idea, bad idea?
I don't know about your numbering system. I don't mind, getting a little chronologically, because you and I did discuss maybe doing Wish, I think, at one point, but then no one cared about Wish, and then we forgot about it.
Well, I do care about Wish, but I feel like right now it makes the most sense to just wait until we get to Wish. And we've already, it's a little deceiving because it's like, whoa, we've already gone from 1930 to 2000. How much, how many more movies could there be between 2000 and 2024? There's so many. There are so many.
Yeah, the list starts to explode a little bit in the 90s, more so in the 2000s, and then the 2010s are completely out of control.
So I'm just only throwing it out there just because if anyone wants to have us review like newer movies as they come out, as opposed to waiting 20 years for us to get to them. I don't know. It's just a floating idea. And I don't know. Yeah, if you don't like the numbering system, but it's like we know what
it is hysterical. I find it hysterical. I'm not even saying I wouldn't do it, but I guess
we'll think about
it. Yeah.
If you think that's a good idea, throw a super chat in just to prove it. Prove how much you love it.
No, it is weird. Like, on the making the sausage sort of end, like in my Twilight Zone one, when I have something that's not one of the seasons, I'm always like bonus episode, Yeah. Whereas on my film podcast, we did some other films during the strike and I just kept the numbering going because I was like, who cares? I didn't want to make them all bonus episodes. So, yeah. But
I'm sure there's people with OCD out there that'll be like, no, 107 can't come before 54. No, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Okay, maybe you're convincing me to do that now.
just to torture anyone with OCD. That's kind of sick of you. That's fine.
I think I got over my own OCD because I used to have everything meticulously, CDs, DVDs, meticulously alphabetically ordered. Whereas now I've just got everything thrown on the shelf and I just sift through things till I find something I like, which is kind of more fun, Yeah,
honestly, because when you have things that are in like a certain order, you'll get used to skipping chunks of them, and then it'll just become second nature to skip those chunks. But if you just live in absolute abject chaos and filth and squalor, like every day is a new discovery and a new adventure. You turn over like an empty pizza box, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I still had that movie, and you pop it in. Are you showing us a pizza box right now?
Yeah. No, I think we've mentioned the Blu-ray apocalypse, right? Where I just got a bunch of Blu-rays for like 50 cents a piece. So the fun of this is I can now randomly pull one out and maybe I'm going to watch Jersey Boys. And it's like my personal little West Coast
Is it Jersey Boys in Japanese?
Well, it's in English. I mean, it's got, you could watch in Japanese.
Is there an audio dub of it in Japanese?
That movie yes, there is. That movie with old Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and I don't know what the English title is. I still don't. Anyway, I'll watch it.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. It wasn't one of my favorites.
No, I'm sure it's not. No, I bought like some really bad movies. Oh, there's a good one, Cool Hand Luke. So anyway, yeah, it's like kind of fun just to randomly do that. So I'm enjoying the joys of not being OCD, whereas I used to be a little more
they're
OCD.
Still pretty meticulously arranged inside of like a brand new looking Tupperware container.
Actually, yeah, they are alphabetical in here. But,
oh my god!
But on my shelf, they're not. On my shelf, they're just in completely rando order. Well, I guess what's your show? You can talk about your show. That's this will air an audio podcast before that, but probably the video one after. So I don't know. Plug how you want.
Oh yeah. So if you like the audio podcast, I put a video podcast on to my YouTube channel. The exact same video. The only difference is that you get to see our faces, and there's a freaking pop-in chat now. Like over the last year or so, it went from hey, there's 3 people watching the video right now. It was kind of exciting to like, oh my god, there's 30 people, to now we're getting like 60, 100 people watching. The chat starts going off into like their own little tangents, which has been awesome. So I've been doing my best to attend all the different premieres. I try to air these ones. I'm still figuring out the right time slot. But I think that I usually air these at like either 9 a.m.s or 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you just go on the YouTube, you can subscribe. I try posting them like at least a week or 2 ahead of time to give you a chance to subscribe and watch it and everything. So those have been super fun. And man, I've gotten so much feedback too. Someone was showing a lot of good connections that we might have missed in Pocahontas, showing connections we missed in a bunch of previous movies that almost seem obvious in retrospect. But so now I think whenever Pocahontas or some of these other movies come up again, I'm just going to be able to drop all kinds of extra knowledge that are coming just from the chat, which is a really cool dynamic that wasn't like when we first started. When we first started, it was just me and you ranting about stuff, whatever we kind of come up with. And now there's like a whole ecosystem that's like growing around this particular topic and podcast. So I don't know. It's been awesome to watch that. And if you want to be part of it, go follow Paranoid American on YouTube.
Yeah, and I've been in the comments a bit there, although I think I'm coming in with a little picture of a shrine, Japanese shrine. It says Matt and Luke Sci-Fi Sanctuary because I'm not coming in under my proper name. So if you see that's me. I have commented to a few people there. I was like, I don't know if they actually know like that's me making the comment, but yeah.
It's the meme with the guy at the party in the corner. It's like, no one knows that I'm the real Matt.
Right. I was just like, it's not really clear that's me, because
they have no idea who I am.
Someone came in with the pronunciation and it's like, oh yeah, I couldn't pull that word out of time. It's like,
tell us officially, what is the ideal pronunciation of your last name?
You know what? People in my family say it differently. So Kamages, I've heard uncles say Kamajees. I'm not offended by the way people say my name anytime because I whatever. In Japan, they can usually say it correctly because Kamajizu are all Japanese sounds. So in Japan, everyone says it correctly. It's weird.
So is it Kamajiz or Kamajees?
I say it the first way, but the second way is still correct. It's a weird name. I have a weird name.
If anyone's been wondering how the hell to pronounce his name, it's just dealer's choice, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, my mom, of course, as many mothers do, got into the whole genealogy thing, and it apparently went through Holland. You go back to Switzerland or Germany, and it's a Königssee, King's Lake, because apparently an ancestor was like a game warden at the king's hunting grounds. So it does. The name actually does make sense if you know the etymology of it. Okay, there's that. Anyway, I do a bunch of podcasting other than this. I talk about really good movies, really bad movies at Films and Filth, The Twilight Zone, as I mentioned, at Time Enough Podcast. And we've been rocking through the series Space 1999 with Podcast 1999. You can look that up on all the podcatchers or support us on Patreon at Podcastius, where you also get extra chatter like me and my co-host going on about synthesizers for 30 minutes. I didn't sell that there, did I?
American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
We're all American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.